Welcome to Dr. Ishan Arya's Deep Dish Dialogues. Today we're embarking on a really thoughtful journey, actually. It's prompted by a question from one of you, a listener.
Hmm.
And our mission in this deep dive, it's really to unpack this profound tension, the feeling of gratitude, for your good fortune, but then that discomfort that creeps in when others around us are suffering.
Right.
It's a really nuanced look at what it means to say thank you in this complex world where things can seem, well, incredibly unfair sometimes.
And what's so fascinating, I think, is how the listener has put into words something so many people grapple with, especially maybe people who feel spiritually inclined, but don't necessarily follow traditional religious paths.
Yeah.
It really gets to that core human struggle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Wrestling with gratitude when it feels like it implies, I don't know, favoritism,
Mm.
which understandably can feel morally
Mm,
awkward, troubling even.
definitely.
It forces you to ask, well, what is gratitude really when there's so much suffering out there?
Okay, so let's dive into this listener's perspective because it's quite specific and really insightful. They approach this whole thing with a particular view of, let's call it the divine or ultimate reality.
Hmm.
For them, this reality is just beyond human understanding. It's way too vast, too mysterious to be like micromanaging our lives. They really stress this idea of a supreme energy isn't some puppet master pulling strings.
Right, not intervening personally.
Exactly. It's unknowable, abstract, definitely not picking winners and losers day to day.
And that aligns so well with various streams of thought, actually. You see echoes of it in deism, the idea of a creator who sets things in motion but then steps back.
Sure.
Or in non-theistic spiritualities where meaning and connection are found without a personal God.
Mm.
Even in apophatic theology, this idea that you can only really talk about the divine by saying what it's not.
Because it's beyond our words.
Precisely. It's fundamentally about spiritual humility.
Mm.
The listener is saying, look, whatever this ultimate reality might be, our human concepts, our language,
Mhm.
they just fall short. They can't capture something so immense, so abstract. It's a really humble stance, acknowledging the limits of our own perception.
And what's really striking is how this connects to their ethics, too. They're very clear on human agency, taking full responsibility for their actions. They're not looking outwards for blame or credit.
Yes, exactly. And that reflects a very mature ethical viewpoint, doesn't it?
Too.
It reminds me of traditions like Stoicism or even existentialism.
How so?
Well, they emphasize figuring out what's actually in our control, our choices, our responses, versus what isn't. Things like fate, pure chance, accidents.
Right, the external stuff.
Right. It's about having an internal locus of control, saying, okay, I'm accountable for how I act, for my choices, but I also get that some things are just beyond me. And their gratitude practice, because of this, is quite unique. It's this blend. There's appreciation, sure, for the universe, this abstract wonder, but also this deep honor for ancestors, for the goodwill of other people who've helped them. It's very personal, very humble.
So it's not directed at a specific being who intervened.
No, it seems more like a non-specific, humble gratitude.
Yeah.
It acknowledges life's unpredictability, the convergence of factors, human actions, natural events that led to something good, without saying, someone directly chose this for me.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting, isn't it? Where the core problem, the conundrum, really hits home for them.
Yeah.
The listener asks, essentially, if I say thank you for being spared, say, I missed a flight that crashed, or I recovered when someone else didn't, am I implicitly okaying the suffering of those who weren't spared?
Oof. Yeah. That's the hard question.
It's deeply uncomfortable. They give those examples, the near miss, the hospital bed scenario, very relatable, very stark.
It absolutely is. And it's one of the toughest moral and spiritual knots humans have tried to untangle for centuries. We see it everywhere, like you said. Survivor's guilt after a tragedy. Someone thanking God for healing while others are dying nearby. The person who swerves and avoids a crash when the car behind doesn't. It's not just philosophy. It's raw. It's emotional. It's often deeply distressing for people.
That discomfort feels key here.
It really is. It's a signal.
So what does this mean for our listener? They feel disturbed by this, and the source material we looked at really highlights that this discomfort is actually proof of their moral clarity.
Exactly. It shows they're not saying, oh, I deserve this more. They're not trying to justify anyone else's pain. Their discomfort is their integrity showing.
Okay.
The heart of the issue, as the listener so brilliantly pinpointed, is really in the language. The phrase, I was spared,
Right, it implies something.
implies intention. It carries this heavy weight, suggesting a chooser, right? As if some cosmic force is actively picking winners and losers, intervening personally.
But Their whole worldview rejects that.
Precisely. In their view, there's no divine scoreboard, no puppet master, no celestial accountant tallying things up. Life and death, fortune and misfortune. These often come from a complex mix of natural causes, probability, sheer randomness, or, human systems and choices.
Things outside anyone's deliberate control.
Often, yes. It's not about one person being deliberately chosen over another. So, listener, your discomfort, that's your compassion speaking. It's your intellectual honesty. It shows a really developed moral conscience that refuses easy answers for suffering.
Okay, so if the language of being spared is the problem, with all its troubling baggage, how do we reframe that feeling, that genuine thankfulness we feel sometimes? How do we acknowledge good fortune without implying favoritism or, worse, justifying someone else's bad luck?
Yeah, how do you hold the gratitude without the guilt?
Exactly.
Well, we can try shifting the language, moving away from "I was spared" towards something maybe more neutral, more humble.
Like,
Perhaps something like, "I am still here, and I recognize the weight of that." Or simply, "I am grateful for this moment of continued existence." See, that doesn't assign a cause. It doesn't imply agency or that someone else deserved less.
it just acknowledges the reality.
Yes, it acknowledges the incredible fact that you're still here, but with reverence, not entitlement. It's about choosing to meet the moment with gratitude, even when you don't know the why behind it all. It allows gratitude to sit alongside that moral grief, that philosophical uncertainty.
It separates the what is from the why it is.
Beautifully put. It's less about the reason you're here and more a deeply felt recognition that you are here.
But then, okay, if there's no divine intervention, no one actively sparing you, and maybe it is just random chance sometimes, why say thank you at all? Who or what are you thanking? Isn't it just the dice roll?
That's a really crucial question, and it forces us to think about what gratitude really is outside of a transactional model.
Right, not like thanks for the gift.
Exactly. Gratitude doesn't have to be a quid pro quo. It can be, well, a posture,
Yeah.
a stance you adopt towards life itself, an act of conscious awareness maybe.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
When you say thank you, maybe you're not addressing a specific being or force. Maybe you're saying, "I am profoundly aware right now of how precious this moment is, this breath, this safety, this connection. I don't take it for granted."
So it's an internal declaration?
Kind of. You're not denying the injustice or the suffering elsewhere. You're not pretending everything's divinely perfect. You're just choosing, actively choosing, even in this messy, often painful world, to recognize the beauty, the grace, the connection when you experience it.
And you're saying that's a moral act in itself?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
It means you're not numb. You're not indifferent. You're awake to the good and precious, just as you're awake to the tragic and unjust. It's a statement of engagement with life, warts and all, rather than some cosmic accounting.
What really hits me here is this idea that, well, you don't have to pick one. You don't have to choose between gratitude and sorrow or between joy and grief. You can actually hold both at the same time.
Absolutely, yes. And that might be the most profound, most mature, spiritual and emotional stance we can take.
It feels more honest to how life actually is.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You don't have to force yourself into that awful position of saying, "Thank you that I lived and they died." That feels wrong, because it is wrong, morally speaking. Your integrity rejects that.
So what's the alternative expression?
It's something much wider, maybe. "I am so thankful for this moment of life, this breath, even as I grieve that others don't have it. I don't understand why things happen this way, why there's suffering alongside joy. But I will live this moment fully, with kindness, with awareness, maybe even in their honor."
You're not trying to explain it away?
No. You're not justifying it. You're not even claiming to understand it. You're just saying, "I see the good in my life, and I acknowledge it, and I see the pain in the world, and I don't turn away from that either." It embraces the whole spectrum.
That's about making gratitude bigger, deeper, expanding it so it actually includes the sorrow, the empathy, the humility. It's not just this narrow, maybe even selfish feeling.
That's it, exactly. It adds this vital layer of depth, of ethical responsibility.
Okay.
This becomes a gratitude that can truly coexist with moral grief, with philosophical restraint. Your thank you isn't for being chosen, for being favored. It's for the simple, stunning, often inexplicable fact that you're here.
And you carry that awareness forward.
Yes, with empathy for those who aren't here or who are suffering, and with a sense of responsibility for how you use the life you have. You acknowledge the mystery, the "I don't know why,"
Yeah.
but you commit to acting as if every moment matters. Because frankly, in a world this fragile, it really does.
This whole discussion, this conundrum the listener brought up, it feels like it must connect to bigger philosophical ideas, right? Is there a name, a formal term for this kind of moral tension, this discomfort around your own good fortune when others suffer?
That's a great question. And while there isn't one single perfect label that captures everything we've talked about, it definitely overlaps with and builds on several recognized concepts.
Like what?
Well, for instance, it's clearly a kind of moral and existential extension of survivor's guilt.
Ah, okay. I know that term from trauma contexts.
Exactly. Traditionally, it's about feeling guilty for surviving something others didn't. But what our listener describes is broader, isn't it? It's not tied to one specific event, but it's a more general awareness of life's, well, unfairness. A kind of spiritual or moral survivor's guilt, maybe, arising from just noticing your good luck next to someone else's suffering and asking, why me?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What else? Are there other ways philosophers or theologians frame this?
Definitely. You could connect it to what some call the problem of gratuitous good, or maybe theodical asymmetry.
Okay, unpack those a bit. Theodicy is usually about the problem of evil, right?
Right. The classic question, how can a good God allow suffering? This is almost the flip side. How can you be truly grateful for the good things, health, safety, whatever, without implying that some power intentionally withheld that good from someone else?
Ah, I see. If I thank someone for my win, does that mean they caused someone else's loss?
Precisely. It raises those same tricky questions about cosmic justice, but starting from good fortune instead of suffering, it's the other side of the same theological coin, in a way.
That's fascinating. And it also makes me think of moral luck.
Yes, absolutely. Philosophers like Bernard Williams, Thomas Nagel,
Yeah.
they talked about this. The idea that so much of our lives, even the moral outcomes, is influenced by luck factors totally outside our control.
It's not just about being virtuous or deserving things.
Not at all. Where you were born, sheer chance, random events, these play huge roles. You could be the most careful person, but bad luck happens. The listener's discomfort taps right into this. They get intuitively that they're being spared isn't necessarily a reward, but often just circumstance, chance, the absence of misfortune that hits someone else.
It pushes back against simple ideas of merit.
It really does. It forces us to confront how much randomness shapes our lives.
So with all these threads, survivor's guilt, gratuitous good, moral luck, is there a term that kind of pulls it all together that captures this specific blend of gratitude and grief and moral awareness?
Well, the source material we explored pointed towards a really evocative term, tragic gratitude.
Tragic gratitude.
Yeah, it's not a standard academic term you'll find everywhere, perhaps, but it's used increasingly to describe exactly this, a gratitude that isn't naive. It doesn't ignore suffering or injustice.
It's post-innocent, as you said earlier.
Exactly. It's humble, ethically awake. It holds space for both wonder and mourning. It acknowledges the tragedy inherent in a world where good fortune and suffering exist side by side, often randomly. If you were inventing a phrase, maybe the paradox of ethical gratitude or the humility of tragic gratitude gets close too. It's gratitude that's been deepened, maybe even scarred, by confronting the world's brokenness.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for us, and especially for our listener who brought us this really profound, honest question?
I think it means you embrace living in that tension, not with despair, but with, well, courage.
Yeah.
And real spiritual integrity. You let your gratitude grow wider, softer, more humble.
Okay.
You say thank you not because you think you were specially chosen or favored, but simply for the incredible fact that you're still here, breathing, experiencing.
And the grief part.
You let the mourning, for those who aren't here or those who suffer, actually shape how you live. More gently, maybe, more attentively, more empathetically. You carry that awareness of life's universal fragility forward.
So the message is, keep saying thank you. But let that thank you be big enough to hold sorrow. Let it be deep enough to hold doubt and uncertainty. Let it be humble enough to admit you just don't have all the answers, you don't know why, and let it be loving enough that it motivates you to act like every single moment matters.
Because it does. Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And see you in the next discussion.